Everyone, welcome back for another episode of Adams for the Love of Movie Picks. This time we're going to have a special feature tonight. Something I've only done a couple of times before on the channel. So I just got back from seeing the 2024 hit film Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. So I got to tell you folks, it was really good. You know, I've always been a big fan of the Ghostbusters series. Obviously the very first one came out before I was even born. The second one came out a year after I was born. And then, of course, we had the Ghostbusters Afterlife a couple of years ago, which was great, don't get me wrong, but I actually like this movie better. And I'm going to tell you why in a minute. So, first of all, the Ghostbusters Frozen Empire stars Paul Rudd as Gary Gruberson, Carrie Coon as Callie Spangler, Finn Wolfhard as Trevor Spangler, McKenna Grace as Phoebe Spangler, Kumail Nanjiani as Nadeem Razmadi, Patton Oswalt as Dr. Hubert Wartsky, Celeste O'Connor as Lucky, Logan Kim as Podcast, Emily Lind as Melody, and of course you got the original Ghostbusters. You got Bill Murray as Peter Venkman, you got Dan Aykroyd as Ray Stantz, and you've got Ernie Hudson as Winston Zedmore. And then you've got, I forget her actual name, but she plays Janine Melnitz, Annie Potts. So yeah, it's got a pretty all-star cast in it. You know, obviously the original Ghostbusters from the first two films, as well as, you know, their slight appearance in the third film. And then you got the characters that were introduced in the third film. By the way, I don't count the Ghostbusters all-female movie as part of this franchise. It is a Ghostbusters movie, but it's not, I don't count it with this. It's kind of its own standalone thing. So that being said, you know, that's what I'm saying, first, second, third, fourth. And yeah, you got the characters that were introduced in the third one reappearing in the fourth film. Now, Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, what I like, so the third film was great to get back to the Ghostbusters franchise after. So, like I said, I think it was 89 was number 2, and then, what was it, 2021, I think, was Ghostbusters Afterlife. So, you know, you got that big gap. It was nice to get back to it, but it just didn't have quite the same feel to it because it's the only Ghostbusters film that didn't take place in New York, which, in my opinion, is like Ghostbusters / Ghost Central, or as they called it in the Ghostbusters franchise, Spook Central. And to me, it was, you know, where everything was happening and really where the center of the Ghostbusters universe takes place. So, you know, taking place in a small town, away from all that, it was great, don't get me wrong, but I just didn't like it as much as this one, which goes back to the New York setting, which is awesome. Now, the only thing that I would have liked, so you briefly saw in a credit scene, post-credit scene, at the end of Ghostbusters Afterlife, Ernie Hudson returning to the firehouse in New York. So you got a sense that it was going to go back to New York for the next film. The only thing that I didn't like is that it you know, starts off showing a scene in New York in 1904. You know, I'm not going to say too much because I don't want to give it away, but, you know, hinting at what's to come in the film. And then all of a sudden it goes to modern day New York. And the characters, the new characters from the third film, Afterlife, are now Ghostbusters fighting ghosts in New York. It doesn't really show a proper transition. It's just like they went from the small town Oklahoma and in Ghostbusters Afterlife, and all of a sudden they're in, you know, in New York fighting ghosts as Ghostbusters in Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. You know, I'm not trying to say the movie's terrible. It just would have been nice to see a little more proper transition. It's just like, okay, they're all of a sudden they're Ghostbusters in New York. There was no transition, which I think would have been a little nicer. But I digress. It's still a great film. So basically, yeah. So they're Ghostbusters in New York now, and carrying on the Ghostbusters tradition. What I did like too about this film is that it incorporated the original Ghostbusters a little more than Afterlife, which, in my opinion, it could have been more. But the way they did it made it work for the film. This, I love it because, yeah, they're definitely in the film more, and they're part of the storyline more, which is really cool. So in Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, the bad guy is an ancient 4,000-year-old god, basically a god of ice is the best way to describe him. I cannot think of his name. It's like Gurmak or Garak or something like that. And he's the bad guy, and he's trapped inside this orb, this magical orb, that, has been his prison for the last, 4,000 years. And he gets released, and I'm not going to say how, but he gets, he's hell-bent on taking his revenge on humanity. You'll understand the story when you see the film. And basically, that's the storyline of Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. It's them, well, first of all, they're trying to prevent him from getting out, and then when he does get out, they are, they're tasked with, stopping him. So, there's a lot of nostalgia in this film, which I like. Like I said, it goes back to New York where the first two films took place. There's a lot of similarities between I'm trying to think which film was it. It would have been the first film and this film, where Gozer is trying to release all the spirits that the Ghostbusters captured in their containment unit, and thanks to Walter Peck. Oh, by the way, that's another thing. So William Atherton reprises his role as Walter Peck, or Dickless, as Venkman's character calls him, from the first film. And strangely enough, he's the mayor of New York now. Like, how a guy like that ever got voted into office as mayor of New York is beyond me. But he reprises his role beautifully, by the way. And so in the first film, he's an Environmental Protection Agency agent. He shuts down the containment unit, the ghosts get released. In this film, Garak is trying to release the ghosts from the containment unit for his own purposes, very similar to Gozer. So, there's a lot of similarities between the two films. There's a couple things I think I would have, and I'm not saying that it makes the movie bad, I just think it would have made the movie that much better if they did. So, one of the main sub-storylines of the film is Phoebe's character is having a bit of a hard time fitting in with the family. She's the only non-adult in the family. Her older brother is, Trevor is now, a legal adult. He's 18. So she's having a bit of a hard time fitting in with her family, and she actually ends up making friends with a ghost in a park playing chess. It's a ghost of a 16-year-old girl named Melody who died in a fire. So I would have liked to have seen maybe a little bit more of a backstory on Melody. You didn't have to spend like a half an hour, but even a couple of minutes into her backstory, I think would have been a little bit neat. And then another sub-story or subplot, whatever you want to call it, in the movie that I think could have been explored a bit more is the reintroduction of Slimer. So Slimer, you didn't really think of it, but you haven't seen Slimer since the second film. He just kind of, I guess he never left New York, so I guess it makes sense that you didn't see him in the third film. But he's not really talked about or anything from the second film to this film, the fourth film. And basically, I guess he's been living in the firehouse this whole time because Trevor discovers him living in the attic. Not really living, but like that's where he's been. He's been in the attic of the firehouse this whole time. I think they could have done a little bit more of a storyline with Slimer. They never really show any of the old Ghostbusters interacting with Slimer again. They don't really, nobody really explains to Trevor who he is. It was funny to have him in there for sure. But I think that could have been cool to kind of have him a bit more of the storyline because as of the second film, he's kind of like the Ghostbusters mascot in a way. And it just felt like he's just making a cameo appearance. I didn't really like it. I think it could have been a little bit more, like I said, a little bit more story to it there. But I digress. It's still cool to see Slimer again, bring him back into the film. That was another thing that was cool about this film is that they, like I said, they show him living in the attic. They show different aspects of the firehouse. Like they kind of explore the firehouse more in depth than they did in the first two films. I think it may have something to do with the fact now that the Spengler family, as well as Gary, who I guess is maybe like their stepfather, they don't really explain if him and Callie got married or not. But because I guess they're living in the firehouse, they're showing the firehouse a little bit more in depth. Like they're showing all the separate bedrooms. They're showing it's got a kitchenette, like an actual proper kitchenette. It's got an attic, which I didn't even know the thing had an attic, which leads to the roof. Even the containment area unit at one point in the film is exposed. Like for the first two films, you only see the front of the containment unit where they put the ghosts in. They actually expose what's behind the wall, like the containment unit itself, like the actual housing, which is really cool. And it's neat to see that. And like I said, a lot of nostalgia in this film. Just I'm really glad they brought the Ghostbusters back to New York, which in my opinion is where the Ghostbusters belong. So that was really cool. So if you haven't seen Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, I highly recommend checking it out in the theater. I just couldn't wait for it to come on video, folks. I had to see it, and I was not disappointed. It was a great film. And basically, if you don't want to go see it in theaters, definitely once it comes out on video, I highly recommend checking it out because you will not be disappointed there, folks. So there you are, a special edition of Adams for the Love of Movie Picks. If you're a fan of Ghostbusters like I am, you will not be disappointed in this film there, folks, all right? So there we are. That's all we have for this week. We'll catch you next week for another episode. Take care.
And now, folks, it's time to say goodnight. We sincerely appreciate your patronage and hope we've succeeded in bringing you an enjoyable evening of entertainment. Please drive home carefully and come back again soon. Good night.
Hey there, folks. Just a little side video to add to the end of the video I just did on Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. A couple things I forgot to mention because I was covering so much I forgot about it. One of the cool things is I think was a smart idea because they were absolutely hilarious. They kind of remind me of Minions in a way. They brought back the little Stay Puft Marshmallow guys from the Ghostbusters Afterlife. They've almost become almost like pets to they're living in the basement of Ray's occult shop, which is kind of funny. And then also they are in this is another cool thing, they kind of show the future of ghostbusting. So I forget what Ernie Hudson's character Winston Zedmore did, but he's made himself rich with the company that he has, and he's used some of his money to privately fund this kind of secret Ghostbusters technological development lab, like the future of proton packs and a new containment unit. Because that's one of the things I forgot to mention in the film. The containment unit, the old containment unit, over the course of 40 years, has filled up. It's full. And basically, they've designed a newer, bigger containment unit to deal with that problem, which is really cool. Also, at the secret lab, they have, almost like a live-action containment unit where they could put specific individual ghosts on, almost on display, almost like an exhibit at a zoo, so they can study them up close and in person, which is kind of cool. And one of the ghosts that's in that containment unit, I love this little guy. He's kind of like a mini Slimer in a way. He's this weird kind of bean-looking little thing that spews ectoplasm. It's disgusting, but he's absolutely hilarious. And one other thing, too, is that this movie had a lot of funny points in it, too. There was a lot of good humor in this film, too. So I just wanted to add that to the end of my video there, folks. All right, take care, and we'll see you next week.